Okay, not bad at all. I was able to get this simple blog clone up and running in very less time. And you can see that my complete blog is looking very similar to my existing blog on Next.js. So how easy is it to create a blog in AnalogJS? And will I be able to migrate my existing blog to AnalogJS? Now, these are the questions that I was grappling with when I started my own investigation into AnalogJS. And what I found out was yes, I could very well do it. But don't take my word for it. Let's go on a journey where we try to create a blog ourselves. But first of all, what is AnalogJS? Now, AnalogJS is a meta framework, which is a framework built on top of a framework. So, AnalogJS is built on top of Angular, just like Next.js is built on top of React. Why was it needed? Well, it has some cool new features such as file-based routing and built-in Markdown content support, which allows developers to create websites really quickly and easily, more quickly than you would be able to do in Angular. Okay, so going back to my blog site, what do I actually need from AnalogJS? So currently my blog site is built with Next.js and I'd like AnalogJS to have at least three basic features so I could have a smooth migration between. So one, I really like the file-based routing. As you can see here, it's simple and quick to create new pages in Next.js and modify existing ones. Second, I have all of my blog posts in the form of markdown files. So I'd like AnalogJS to handle that really well. Last but not the least, I want my site to be static site generated with pre-rendering so that it can be cached on the CDN and it's good for SEO as well. So for example, if you look at my blog here and I do view page source, I want all of my content or HTML to be present in my view source. So let's go over each of them and see whether AnalogJS fits the bill for each of them. First, file-based routing. Now in normal Angular projects, you need to create a roots file which contains all of the roots for your different components and you need to create associations between them. But in AnalogJS, this is much simpler. You just need to create your component and put that in a specific folder structure and AnalogJS is going to generate your roots automatically for you. So let's create a basic analog project using the CLI command npm create analog using the latest version. And you can see it asks for the project name. So we are just going to say analog blog demo and it asks to select a template and then it has various variants that we can use. So I'm going to use the Angular version 17 variant and it asks whether I want to add Tailwind to your project. So I already have Tailwind in my existing site as well. So I'm really happy that I won't have to migrate this part. Okay, so it generates a project for it. And then it says that I need to go into that folder and just install all the dependencies. Okay, great. So once it's all installed, we can then simply go into the VS Code and then open up the terminal and run npm run start. This is going to run the development server and we can see our basic site that's generated. And you can see it says that localhost 5174 is where it has built the site. Let's take a look at that. And this is the basic page that Analog provides out of the box. There's a simple counter here and it's just a basic page. So each page in AnalogJS is basically an Angular standalone component with inline style and templates. So if we go in app and in the pages folder, you can see that there's an index.page. And you can see it's a standalone component with a template and a style on the same page and the component code as well. Now the default page for the app is basically the index.page.ts in that specific folder. So pages folder is basically the root folder and index.page.ts is the default page in that folder. Now there are other ways to specify the default page as well, but I prefer to use index.page.ts because it is more clear that what it represents. Okay, so now for my basic page in my blog, I just want to keep it like my existing site. So I'm just going to give a heading and a link to my blog page. So I'm just going to copy some code from my existing site that I built and I'm just going to use the same code here. So I'm just going to copy this component here and let's see how this looks. So once I save this, it's going to refresh and now when we look, we have a simple heading and we have a link to the blog. Now obviously when we click on it, it's not going to do anything because the root is not there. Okay, so now add the blog index page or the page where I will keep the the list of my blogs. So to do that, it's really simple. So in the pages, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it blog. And then within that folder, I'm going to create another file index.page.ts. And I'm just going to copy the existing code here of that component into that same file. and change this name a bit. I'm going to call it blog list, and this will be the blog list component. And the styles I'm going to remove, and I'm just going to test, and I'm going to say welcome to my blog page. And let's just test out whether it's working or not. So now when we go in our main page and we visit the blog here, we can see that we go to our slash blog. The route has been automatically generated. See, nice and simple. Okay, so now I need to add some content to my blog so that I can show that those blog posts list page in the form of a list. So to do that, Analog basically provides a content folder. And what we are going to do is in the source, right beside assets and servers, we are going to create a folder called content. In fact, I'm going to also create another folder within this called posts, because I want to keep other content as well aside from my blog posts as well for the future. So now in this post folder, I'm going to copy some of my existing markdown files, which I have from my existing site. So let me just copy those here. So once I've copied these files, you can see these 4 files are here. These are 4 of my blog posts along with the front matter and all of the content with it. So now that we have content, how do we actually use it within the AnalogJS framework? So we need to enable it in our config. So for our config, we are going to app.config file, and you can see here that we have some default config already given, but what we need is basically provide content and then with markdown renderer. So this is going to enable the reading of the content folder. So let's just save this and let's go back to our blog and test this out. So to test this, AnalogJS basically uses the dependency injection in Angular to a very good degree here, and it provides a function called inject content files. So we are going to just declare a post here, a read only, and we are going to use inject content files here. Now this basically fetches all of the files that are present in the content folder. But for this to work, it also needs to have a type, and it's good to have a type here. So we're just going to copy a type that I already have in my existing site. I call it the post attributes. You can call it whatever you need. And this type is going to basically go here, and then we can just call this function. Now this post is going to contain, if you look at what's the type of this, you can see that it has a content file and it has the type of post attributes. It is an array. That means it's a list of posts. So how to show that here? We are going to just simply use a for loop, and we can use this for loop using the new control flow released in version 17. So for this for loop, we are going to do post of posts. We just need to add a track. We're just going to track the whole post itself. Okay. And then here we can simply just use a div to test things out. And we are going to take the title of this post. Now the title of this post will be present in the front matter for this, and the front matter comes in the attributes object of this content file. So here we can see that we have the title. Okay, so let's save this. And now when we look at our blog again, let's visit the blog, and you can see that I have 4 of my blog posts listed here, the titles at least. Great. So all of this works. Now I just need to add some styling to it. So let's go back to our code here, and let's simply copy this code here. Okay, and you can see that it gives some issue with the router link. Now if you know Angular, you would know it's really simple to solve this. It's a standalone component. You can just put in the imports here, and you can do the router module. Okay, it's going to remove that error, and then the second error is the date. And I really like this, that I was finally able to use the date pipe and all of the other awesome pipes in Angular which make displaying things really easy. I really missed that in Next.js and React when I worked with it. So we are going to just add date pipe here so that it works. This error goes away, and now just test it out. So now that we test it out, we can refresh it. And now you can see I have my basic list ready, and it looks kind of good. But of course, there are no images. So what do we do of the images? Now for the images, in my existing site, I am storing it categorized in terms of the post slug, and I'm keeping it in specific folders. So I already have those folders and I just need to copy them in. So I'm just going to copy in those folders as well. So as you can see here that I have my blog folders, and in each of the slug folders, I have the images that are being used there because I'm referencing it in the same way in my markdown files. And in Next.js, I had to also specify the complete folder, and I had to include assets. So I just needed to change that because this blog folder is basically going to get copied into the root folder when I deploy it. So in, for example, in this markdown file, I had to just change this to assets-blog to /blog. And that was it. I used the multiple replacing feature and it didn't take much time. So now let's try this out and let's see whether I can see my images. And yes, you can see that my images appear really fine and it is looking really nice out of the box as it is. Okay, so now that we have the list page ready, we need to create the actual blog post page. And when we click on this, it doesn't go anywhere because the blog post page is not created. Now, how do we create that? So to create the blog post page, all we need to do is we need to create another component here. And this time we need to give the slug in the form of this. Now, what this means is that this page is going to accept a dynamic slug parameter into it. Okay. So this index.page.ts is basically your default page when you go to the blog itself. And when you have blog/slug, it's going to open up the blog post page. Okay, so let's just copy the same thing again. And if we can just copy the basic page here that we had and we copy it to the slug page, I'm just going to change these things here. So this would be the blog post and this would be the blog post component. And I just want to check whether this works. So I'm going to do welcome to my blog post. I just want to test this out. Okay, let's see if this works. So now when we try to refresh the page and when we go to this, you can see that it goes to blog/this slug.page.ts page and it shows our this. Now obviously for all of the blog posts at this point we just have the same thing, but now let's show our actual blog post rendering the markdown. So how do we do that? Okay, so to get the parameter and to use this to basically get the specific content file, we can actually use the activated route method as well, which Angular provides. But here Analog has made your life easy as well. So here we're going to declare a post observable because as you know, the parameter can be an observable in Angular, or it is usually an observable, and we can use inject content. So this is going to get a specific file from the content folder. And how do you specify what specific file it would be? So first let's give it the type that we already had because it will be the type of a post. And then how do we specify which file to actually get? So we are going to specify the param here. And in our case, the param will be the slug. Okay. So because we specify slug here, we need to specify slug here as well. That means that it's going to automatically read the param and detect changes to it and then get the specific content itself. And then we also need the specify the subdirectory here because we are keeping our content file in a specific subdirectory. Great. So now let's test whether we actually get our content here or not. So let's just test that here. Let's create a div here and let's use the new control flow, the if statement here. Let's do post observable and let's use the async pipe as post. Let's put all of this here. Of course, the async pipe is not included by default, so we are going to use imports the async pipe. And in this div, I just want to use the same attributes.title to see whether we are getting that specific content file or not. Now, another thing I didn't mention that this parameter slug basically is going to take the content and is going to match that slug that it has either in the file name or in the front matter itself, and it's going to match it to the specific parameter slug here. And let's see how this look. And you can see that yes, it's getting the same file 2023 in review what I gained and lost, and it's getting the same thing here. Let's go back and let's go to this one and you can see it loads this one. So this is working fine. It means that it's getting the file that we want. Great. So now we just need to add the styling for it and we need to render the markdown content. Now to render the markdown content, Analog actually provides a markdown component. So let's include that here and let's see. We have a markdown component provided by Angular, and let's see with the title we can also add analog markdown here. And now within this content we can actually pass in our post.content. All right, and let's see how this looks. And now when we go there, you can see that I have my whole blog post here, but you can see that the formatting is really bad. So I need to fix some styling for this. And to actually do that, what I need to do is to add the Tailwind CSS typography plugin, which I had used in NextJS as well, to format the text really beautifully and convert it into a readable format. So to do that, I'm just going to install that quickly. I'm going to do npm install at tailwind css slash typography. Great, it's done. And now we're just going to include this in my tailwind.config file. So in my tailwind.config file, I'm just going to import this here. Great. Now I just need to add some HTML that I already have, and I need to copy this in. And we can also include the date pipe here, which we need. And let's just try this out. And now you can see that our blog post renders the markdown really nice. We do have some formatting issues still, which we can fix when we go in our app.component.ts and we just remove this. And we can also add some initial styles here, which is going to make the formatting a bit better. Great. And now you can see that our blog post appears really nice with the Tailwind CSS typography plugin and all of the formatting that we added just now. So our basic blog seems to be up and running, and we can tick two of the requirements that we had initially correct. That means the first one was file-based routing and the second one was to have support for markdown content. So these both of these things work. Now let's look at the third requirement, which was to have pre-rendering and static site generation. Now this is where it wasn't that smooth for me personally. So for pre-rendering, we need to enable it in a v.config.js file, and it does not happen automatically. Now that's not that bad, but it's not as convenient as Next.js either. So let's see how we do that. So how do we specify pre-rendering in the config? We need to go in v.config here, and there is a plugin section here in analog, and within this we actually need to specify the pre-render, and within it we need to specify the routes which should be pre-rendered. So for every route that we add, we need to do it manually here. The base route is basically just a simple slash, so this is mandatory, and the second one is our blog route. So this we can do very easily. But how about dynamically generated routes? Now would we have to manually edit all of them? Well, for that we have a newly released feature called content directory, which we can use here. So content directory, basically it takes in all of the files from a specific content directory and then creates routes for them automatically here. So we can specify it just one time. So for content directory, we can specify source, content, and then posts, which is our folder here. And then we can give a transform function. This transform function takes in a file, which is the pre-render content file, and it can return our route that we want to pre-render. So here in our case, it would be blog slash the file name, because in my case, I'm keeping the slug as the file name itself. So this should do the trick. So let me just go out of this and let me just run npm run build, which we do for building the static files. So it sets as building for production. It's transforming the files. So it built the client application. It's building the SSR application now, which is enabled by default. So it's built the SSR bundle, and now it's trying to pre-render the static pages. But for pre-rendering, I get this specific error on it. Just specifies something about Windows, and I researched on it and I found out that it is a Windows specific issue. But whatever the case, I wasn't able to pre-render my static pages on my own machine, which is a Windows machine. If I go to my dist folder here and I go in analog in public, basically I needed to have the index.html file here and within the blog as well, but nothing was generated because of this error. So locally I could not get it to build. So that's sort of a bummer. So since locally I was getting this error, I tried to do this on Vercel directly instead, which I use for my existing site as well. And that worked like a charm. My pre-rendered files were present there on the source directory. They were generated correctly, and I could see the source as well. In order to fix this, or try to fix it at least, I try to fiddle around with some of the options here. Like for example, we have SSR Boolean option here. So I try to disable SSR, or I try to enable static as well here, like this. But none of these settings basically worked correctly. So this last part, this sort of went mixed for me personally. Although default SSR versioning, it really works fine on Vercel, but this pure static site generation did not really work even on Vercel. So this requirement is not completely ticked off for me, at least for now. So in conclusion, we were able to create a simple blog with AnalogJS quickly and easily, mimicking my own site, and I was also able to deploy it on Vercel. So will I end up migrating my blog site to AnalogJS? Well, despite the SSD deployment issues that I got on my Windows machine, I really like the combination of file-based routing, the markdown content renderer, combined with the Angular's features like dependency injection. So my verdict will be yes. I think AnalogJS is now good enough for simple sites and even moderately complex sites. Now it has many more features that I did not discuss here, such as server API routes and whatnot. And this can be useful for building the different types of apps. And with each new version, I hope that Android keeps getting better and better. And I'd like to give a shout out to Brandon Roberts and other maintainers of this open source project that they have been doing a really good job on this. It was badly needed in the Angular ecosystem. So if you like this introduction to AnalogJS, I'd invite you to subscribe to my channel so that you can get future videos like this, as I might be creating more features for my blog site on AnalogJS itself. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.